Hey everybody, I'm Samantha Snyder.
I'm Morgan Collins.
And we are so excited to introduce you to Numberkind. We got the name for this platform from the German word Wunderkind. Wunder means wonder and kind means child, so the word kind of essentially means child prodigy. And we really connected this to sort of our mission, which is to show people and sort of bust the myth that if you're not naturally good at mathematics from an early age, then you're doomed to struggle with it and you're doomed to hate it and you're doomed to have major issues with it all the way up through your higher education. And we want to show you that that's not true, and that no matter what your history is with mathematics, we're here to help you out of your struggles and help you through those roadblocks.
To be a child prodigy means that you have achieved something great at a young age, not necessarily that you were born with a certain disposition to something. It just means that you achieved. Now, a lot of times achieving comes through a lot of hard work. And we want to show you that the work is there and it's possible to be able to achieve, to become a prodigy at math, achieve in math, even if you feel like you've never had that success in the past.
So in this video, we wanted to not only introduce the platform and kind of talk about where we got the idea, but we wanted to talk about 3 major points that we want all of you to know about mathematics. The first point is that math is hard. One of the things that we always hear, we're both math majors, and one of the things that we always hear when we say what our major is, oh my gosh. And we get like looks of terror and admiration and awe, and some people want to run screaming. and usually what we hear right after that is, I hate math.
Yeah, I hate math. I'm glad that's your thing. It's not my thing.
I hear it all the time is that I can't stand math. It was so hard for me in school. I'm glad I never have to do it again. Or they're in school and they're really struggling with it and just can't believe that we would have chosen that for our entire major.
Right, or even that their child is in school and, well, I can't help them. I'm not good at math.
Yes.
I can't really relate. And you can kind of see how it goes through the generations of the stigma around math and kind of what its purpose is and why it's so hard.
Yeah, it's well established now, like a generalized fear of the subject. And there are some people out there that it comes really naturally to, and they love it and enjoy, they'll do it in their free time and just enjoy it and have their math clubs and everything. But the vast majority of us are not that way. And I think one of the things that I usually say when people say that is there were some days that I felt the same way during acquiring my major.
Yeah, there are definitely days when you second guess yourself and you're doing homework and you see everybody else is done with their homework.
Yeah.
And you're still sitting and working and you've been doing the same problem for 2 hours and you're not done with it yet. Yeah. And you think, gosh, I don't know why anybody would do this. I don't want to be doing this.
And so we went to the same college. We went to High Point University in High Point, North Carolina, and both came out with 4.0 GPAs. We're very successful in our majors. And it was really funny because we had coffee like a few months after graduating, and we were talking about just like our whole experience. And we had this hilarious sort of revelation where one of us mentioned to the other that we felt like we could never keep up with the other one, and that we were behind everybody else in the class. And we were like, oh, me too. So like Morgan felt like, you know, I had everything put together, and I 100% thought Morgan had everything put together. I was like, I wish I was as on top of it as Morgan is. The point being, so we just laughed. We just laughed because we thought that we were the only ones, or at least the only ones amongst the students that were really trying, that were struggling with math, and it didn't just come naturally to us. And so that moment, I think, was a big revelation for me, as well as like many moments during college where I actually had professors say to me, yeah, this stuff is hard. Of course, you're struggling with it right now. Of course, you came to me for help. It's supposed to be hard. We struggle with it in school. Sometimes my professors would sit there and have difficulty with the problem as well because it's just hard. And so that's something that we wanted to establish in starting this platform, is that we understand that it's hard. It's difficult for us a lot of times, still to this day. When I tutor, I run into things that I have to look up, and I try not to like hide that from my students, because I want them to see that everybody struggles with it, even people that are very skilled at it. Now, there are a few people out there that it just comes so naturally to that, but we hate them. We don't want to talk about it.
There definitely are those people out there.
Yeah.
And when you think about kind of the difficulty that comes around math and that revelation that we had, I'm glad we had it because I think that's a lot of where you guys are. You're probably in a classroom somewhere thinking, oh, that person has it all put together. They really get math and I just don't. But you never know who's thinking about the same thing with you, who's thinking, oh, they seem to get it, or it didn't take them as long as it took me to get it. But we want to just establish that being good at math has nothing to do with how long it takes you to understand math. It's about perseverance and getting through stuff. And I think we're really excited to share with you kind of the theory behind some of that, especially coming from an education background as well. I love talking about kind of productive struggling and how awesome it is for your brain to be able to do hard math. And even if you don't get to an answer, it's still amazing for you to be able to try and to be able to get through it.
That term productive struggling is something we definitely need to dive into because I think that really sums up like the math experience.
Yeah.
So point number 2 that kind of follows very easily from point number 1 is that you do not suck at math. Like I said, we hear that all the time. And it's kind of something that people have ingrained in their brains. It's almost like a lot of kids that struggle with negative self-perception because their friends, or maybe they had a bad parenting situation, they're being told they can't do things, and it's not true. It's just that they've been so convinced mentally that they can't do it that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's very much what is going on when you believe that you can't do math and that you suck at it. It's false. You're lying to yourself, or you've been lied to. Society, like I said, it has a lot of like mystery and fear around math, and so you kind of learn from a very early age to feel that way about it. Unless it happens to click with you. And even if it does, even if you do click with it, if you run into issues with it later on as you get into higher education, then you start to convince yourself that you suck at it. I did that multiple times. So very few people actually suck at math, if anybody.
Oh yeah, I think it's the same when people think that they suck at reading. They think they can't read. Maybe you're reading something out loud in class and you mispronounce something. Maybe you just didn't know the word before. It's not something you can't overcome. And I think a lot of people are able to get out of that with reading because they find a story that they like.
Yes.
They find finally their genre, something that clicks with them, and all of a sudden they love reading. And I think it can be the same with math.
Yeah.
That might make you laugh.
Yeah.
Think, oh gosh, there's genres of math. Actually, yeah. There's the algebra path, there's the geometry path. There's a lot of different aspects of math, and you maybe have just not found your thing yet.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you need to shy away from the other stuff just because it's hard. Once you find something that you like to read, you can't just shy away from the textbooks because they help you learn. Shy away from history or something you need to read for English.
Yeah.
But that love of reading helps you get through that. So I think we both really enjoy helping our students find that spark. That one thing that they can cling to in math that they like, that helps them get through the harder stuff, the stuff that they don't like as much.
And you might be sitting there with a pile of homework with red marks and bad grades saying they have no idea what they're talking about. I have the evidence right here in front of me that I suck at math. You may not have been given the correct tools to get through math. That does not mean that you don't have the ability to do well at math. So like Morgan was saying, finding sort of the way to get your brain engaged and interested is a big part of it. And also just being taught to struggle productively, to go get help, all the strategies that we're going to sort of unveil to you about tackling the roadblocks that you find in math. I've talked about this before, and with my students, roadblocks are pretty much built into the experience of being a math student. You rarely encounter long periods of smooth sailing. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They think that smooth sailing equals I'm doing well in math, roadblocks equals I'm struggling in math, and that's not the case. So if you're sitting there with the homework that you're have had a terrible time with, there are ways to fix that, many ways to fix that, and you can and you will with our help.
Yeah, and we absolutely want to show you that along with the roadblocks, sometimes the roadblocks are what is helping you in math. That leads like perfectly into our third point, that math matters, because those roadblocks are a lot of what teaches you how to think mathematically, and that's what that's kind of part of why we think that math matters, is because of the way that it trains your brain to be able to approach problems in life. Not necessarily that you're going to be looking at algebra for the rest of your life, but everybody in life has roadblocks. You're going to come to something you don't know how to get past, whether it's paying a bill or literally just anything. I want to buy a car, and all of a sudden you've got a roadblock. You've got a problem you need to deal with. And doing math trains your brain to be able to pick apart your problem, to be able to understand how to get to the other side of the roadblock.
It's people's favorite joke that I hear about math is,
I'm 75 years old and I hadn't used geometry since the day I graduated.
I understand you may never encounter those subjects in the wild. You rarely do, even in mathematical fields. A lot of the things that you learn in school are in a computer operating system, or they're in some sort of program, and you don't have to do them anymore. Like they're being done by a computer, and you engage with more of the material that requires the human brain for processing. But so that's not the point. I think these people, they don't see the forest for the trees when it comes to all these different things that they're having to engage with. They don't understand the overall effect that's happening, which is their brain, like Morgan said, is being formed to really address issues that are approaching them. And like Morgan said, you're going to encounter roadblocks throughout life, and they might not even involve numbers. A lot of them aren't going to involve numbers, but the logical thinking that you learn from math, that's a very important thing that you need to keep in your brain about math, is the logic, because it's like one of the most logical fields that you can be a part of. And it forces you to get really good at logic, especially the higher up into like higher math education you get. When you learn how to process things in that way and to analyze and use deductive reasoning, you find yourself applying that to your everyday life. I was telling Morgan a story before we started the camera of when I was in college and I was deep into my sort of proofwriting and sort of mathematical thought time period of my learning. I forget even what the issue was now, but it was something involving people, something had nothing to do with numbers. And I found myself breaking it down in that deductive reasoning the way I would have with the mathematical concepts. That was a huge revelation to me, because it's kind of like when you're learning a new language and you find yourself thinking in that language, or identifying objects in that language. Same thing with math.
Math is a language.
It really is.
There's a lot of words you have to learn, a lot of symbols you have to learn. Think about algebra. It's a new way to talk. You're not thinking, if I said 5 plus 2, you probably didn't think of the words.
Yeah.
You thought of the symbols.
Exactly.
So it's a whole new language.
Yeah. And it just keeps your brain really active. There are a lot of like mental athletics you have to do, as I'm sure you've noticed if if you're struggling at all. But it's a beautiful thing. Math is really beautiful, and that's sometimes hard to see when you're down amongst the numbers. But you were talking about like the Fibonacci sequence earlier, and the different underpinnings.
Gosh, yes, it's so incredible once you give yourself over to math and allow yourself to be honestly in wonder, like like we were talking about a second ago, be in wonder of math. Then you can see all of the stuff happening in nature. I loved learning in college about things like the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio, where it's literally found in nature. That's how the world is created, and how it interacts with each other is very, very mathematically. So we want you guys to be able to give yourselves to that, and also leave yourselves the possibilities. Because that's part of what school's for, right? Not necessarily that you are going to use algebra for the rest of your life or essay writing for the rest of your life, but it's giving yourself options and not closing your doors too soon. You, especially if you're in school still, you don't really know where this is going to go. You don't know necessarily, you may think you have a plan for your life, but I'm sure Sam knows your plans may not always be what happens. I certainly know that. So we want you, when you get to your next phase in life, that you're able to have options. And one thing I think we both figured out in college quite quickly is the math field opens doors.
Yes.
You're going to be qualified for jobs that have nothing to do with math. Simply because of that thinking. And also I think because in math you have to learn to rely on others and each other.
Yes.
It's not something you want to be able to try to do on your own. It becomes much more productive when you're able to work with others. And so we want to show you guys through our tips and our videos that we really, really expect that you guys will have open doors because of this newfound love of math.
Talking about keeping your options open is so important. And I see a lot of people, and I look back and see myself thinking that I needed to close doors, when I was like in my mid-teens, that I was definitely not going to do this or that in college or for my profession. A lot of those things have very significantly changed for me, and I'm very, very glad that I left my options open, and not only left my option open, but tried to do well in sort of each subject that I was working on, so that I kept my ability to pursue different paths available. I was not going into college planning to major in math even, and we'll talk about that a little bit in our videos, sort of talking about our individual experiences, but things change, and you might find once you work with us and watch our videos that you can develop a relationship with math that you never knew you had before. So it might not just be that we help you get through the hard times in math, which if we do and that's all we do for you, that's fantastic, but we might also sort of change your outlook when it comes to what you want to do in your higher education. Thank you so much for watching. I know this is a bit of a longer video to just introduce the channel, but we really wanted to break down what we're about. And also there's a lot of good information just to already get you started feeling a little better about yourself as a math student. I feel better already, actually. I feel great.
Much calmer.
All right, thank y'all so much. Y'all have a great day.
See you next time.